Guys, welcome back to Cause Before Symptom. It is your lovely guest host, Urban. I'm filling in for Pastor Carner tonight. He won't be home until tomorrow. He was out of town last night also. I was just not really able to get everything organized and get home in time, and I didn't have enough time to really stream last night. So I'm here tonight. I got a few little random things to share with you tonight. I kind of wanted to share with you a new channel that I found. So we're going to watch a short little clip from that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of these articles that I could dig up. I've been doing a lot of research on the origination of the Jesuit education model, along with some old books from the turn of the what 20th century is the end of the 1800s, and then early 1900s. So something interesting to check out. With that, I hope you all are well. How's it going, Boots? How's it going, Claire? How's it going, R. Gerson? Glad to see you. Nice to see you guys. Yeah. All right, guys. Let's roll the intro. So tonight, what I've actually got planned for you guys, it's going to be a few, like I said, a few older texts, but I wanted to lay the groundwork first before we actually review those. And so, a channel that I would like to actually recommend, because I've been watching a lot of these videos lately. This guy's got a Substack. It's the danceoflife.com. And he actually makes all of his videos and stuff available for download. But he's actually made series kind of on various subjects. I mean, one thing he talks about is the seventh day Sabbath. He talks about how the Sabbath is actually Saturday, because, if you go and you look in a dictionary, Saturday, the seventh day. And that's what the Seventh Day Adventists believe. He talks about Seventh Day Adventists. He talks about all kinds of things. I mean, he talks about the Catholic Church mainly. It's his belief that Rome is the seat of, Mystery Babylon. It is Rome. And so I wanted to watch like a short little bit of this video to lay the groundwork. And then I'm going to kind of go through it. I'm going to show you what all that I found, and kind of examine the evidence that I've found on that end of it. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and get that started for you. I think you guys will find this guy pretty interesting. I encourage you to follow him, to subscribe to him on YouTube. You can also use Substack, danceoflife.com, and I'll probably end up sharing that in the post afterwards. So let's see. There we go. Let's get to share. Here we go.
All right, well, welcome to part 2. This is the Jesuit End Times Conspiracy. My goal is to show you beyond a shadow of a doubt today that there is a connection between the Jesuits and dispensationalism.
How's it going, Amanda? It's been a long time. You're stuck with me tonight. I'm your substitute teacher.
Think to change times and laws. Of course, it's talking about the little horn power, which is the first beast, which is the papacy and its various constituents. He'll think to change times and the law. And of course, there's many applications to that. It's not talking about just regular times and laws, it's talking about God's times and laws. I've looked at several instances in different episodes of how the Sabbath was changed, how the calendar from God's true calendar was changed, how the prophetic times have changed. And we're going to look at the last one in this particular section, which is changing the prophetic times, where God has decreed a certain time, 1260 days, meaning years. The Antichrist power has inverted that, saying, no, 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 it's literal days. Whatever God does, Satan has to do the opposite. And today you'll see how clear that is. Now, very important before we proceed into the message of this section is to understand a few things about premillennialism, which is this idea of a future 1,000-year reign of Christ based on Revelation 20, interpreting that in a literal fashion. Which, of course, if you actually exegete Revelation 20 carefully, which I do in my episode on Revelation 20,
I
you
get
will
that.
see
I
that that's
really
not
do.
the case. But anyway, the idea of a future reign was actually an
Well,
old
we're glad
idea.
to see you.
The
Make it
Jesuits
when you
didn't
can.
create premillennialism. Premillennialism as an idea goes back to the church fathers. It's a very old idea. I've talked about Justin Martyr in his dialogues with Trypho, chapter 80, where he mentions a future 1,000-year reign with Christ. So these things were very old. However, there's a very big however that you need to understand, because again, distinction is very important. The church fathers were all over the place because they were pagan converts. It wasn't like the apostles where they were Jews and they had tradition of the scriptures and they understood certain things. They had all sorts of ideas like the immortality of the soul. They were subordinationists. They believed in a literal 1,000 years. They had a lot of different theories on a lot of different things. The second thing to realize is that the 1,000-year literal reading was just that. It was just 1,000 years in the future. Which, okay, like you can't blame them. Like I could see, I believed in premillennialism. So it was a legitimate, let me put it this way, it was a likely way to interpret Revelation 20 if you don't have context, especially if you don't have, context of how Jews were thinking in those times. But nonetheless, even though they believed in this general reign of Christ in the future, they did not believe in a 7-year tribulation. They did not believe in a Jewish revival. They did not believe in Jews returning and possessing Canaan again. They did not, no concept of a rapture. And of course, not any concept of having a third temple being rebuilt. All of these elements that I just listed off were not part of premillennialism. Premillennialism as an idea that Jesus would come back and instate sort of this golden age was an old belief, but it was devoid of all of these dispensational things. As you will learn today, the Jesuits took premillennialism and warped it with these various things that I just listed, like a Jewish revival, third temple, rapture, all these other things. Jews returning to possess the promised land, personal antichrist. They added all of these things for their advantage to ultimately destroy Protestantism and very importantly for today's episode, for today's message, really, I don't even want to call it an episode, it's a message. Very important for today's message is to understand that and is to bring people back into worshiping the beast. It wasn't just to destroy Protestantism. This was a mistake that I made, and I, whatever, like it is what it is. I believed that was it. The Jesuits just made this, just this theory to destroy Protestantism, which is true. It's very true. You'll see how true that is. But it's more than that. And this is the whole point of today. This is the great delusion. This was made not only to destroy Protestants, but to bring them back to the mother church. And to bring the Jews back, and to bring the Muslims back, and to bring everybody back. It's truly profound. It really is. And it's profound.
So what he's saying, just to kind of recap this, what he's saying is that the Jesuits have designed a misinterpretation of Scripture, which is his theory that he's working on. And what they've done is they've mixed in the mystery religions. They've mixed that into all of the Protestant denominations, and that's kind of what we're seeing now. And by doing that, what they're going to do is they're going to give the Jews their Messiah. They're going to give them somebody like Donald Trump. They're going to bring them in. and let them, lead to this third temple end time scenario. And by doing that, they will, quote unquote, fulfill their prophecy and bring everyone back to the same track. This is the new world religion. The new world religion is what we're kind of witnessing right now. This whole um, apocalyptic Armageddon, zeitgeist. I guess you could say it's a zeitgeist. What he's doing is talking about how this is the coming new age religion. It's not really something in the future, it's right now.
Found how these people work on such long timetables beyond the lifespan of any individual, which of course just proves to you they're in communication with Satan, and Satan is guiding them and telling them what to do. So, with that out of the way, that you have a precise historical context, I want to take you to this paper, which is written by a man named Stephen Bohr. He's actually a Seventh-day Adventist pastor. He's got some very good things to say. Now, look, I'm not Seventh-day Adventist. I feel like I have to give this qualifier almost every time I speak, but I'm not Seventh-day Adventist. I don't agree with many of the Adventists. I think Adventism is right about certain things, but it is a harlot just like every other denomination. So to my Seventh-day Adventist friends, please, you need to realize that when it says in Revelation 18:4 to get out of her, my people, it's also talking about you. You need to get out of this denomination. Adventists, I love my Adventist friends. You have many things right about Bible prophecy. You're one of the last people that are still pointing the finger at the Roman Catholic Church, unless you're John Hagee, which apparently he believes also the Roman Catholic Church is the enemy, which is just so funny to me. But Adventists are the last ones interpreting Bible prophecy historically. And it's a shame because more people need to learn the truth about how to interpret Bible prophecy. So Adventists have a lot of great research that they've done on the historicist lens, and we can consult it. And of course, the motto around here, eat the meat, spit out the bones. That's how you grow into a fox that's got healthy fur and big ears that it can pick up little tiny vibrations of the snake slithering its way through the grass and trying to sneak up on you, because it will. It's going to try to sneak up on you. Unless you have big ears, you won't be able to hear it.
This is a pretty good resource.
So this is titled Futurism's Incredible Journey.
Gives you all the
change of the times and its implication for Seventh-day Adventist apocalyptic interpretation. There's some things in here we won't read because it's not really relevant to us, but I do want to read the historical chronology of how all of these things came to be, because it's truly fascinating. It's just, when you see it all laid out, it's going to blow your mind, I promise. Certainly blew my mind. Froome summarizes the historical evidence. It is clear that from the 14th to the 18th centuries, the incriminating finger of Bible prophecy was squarely pointed at the Bishop of Rome as the predicted Antichrist of Scripture. After presenting an impressive mass of evidence from the original sources, Froome concludes the following, quote, "In Germany, Switzerland, France, Denmark, Sweden, England, and Scotland, there had been simultaneously an impressive declarations by voice and pen that the papacy was the specified Antichrist of prophecy. The symbols of Daniel, Paul, and John were applied with tremendous effect. Hundreds of books and tracts impressed their contention upon the consciousness of Europe. Indeed, it gained so great a hold upon the minds of men that Rome, in alarm, saw that she must successfully counteract this identification of the Antichrist with the papacy or lose the battle." That's right. Bear in mind that those who pointed the finger at the papacy as the great Antichrist were highly educated. Most were experts in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. Many reached their own conclusions independently of others. Their works were saturated with quotations from Daniel 7, Revelation 13, Revelation 17, 2 Thessalonians 2, and Matthew 24. Their testimony was unanimous and covered the entire European continent, which was a huge thorn in the side of the beast. Roman Catholicism's plan to overthrow the Protestant hermeneutic. The papacy knew it could triumph only by turning away the incriminating finger of Bible prophecy. But how could it do this when the evidence was so compelling? Good question. The papacy realized that in order to succeed, it must change the hermeneutical method the Protestants had used to interpret prophecy, i.e., literal days versus historical method. Only by overturning the hermeneutical method of historicism could the papacy reflect the accusing finger. And the papacy laid out a carefully devised plan to do just this. In 1545, the Roman Catholic Church called a church council, which was held in the Italian city of Trent. It was the avowed purpose of this council to arrest the growing Protestant Reformation. The council lasted until 1563, the longest council in history of the Roman Catholic Church. No major decisions were reached with respect to Bible prophecy, but the papacy did categorically reaffirm the dogmas of the Church and pronounced an anathema upon anyone who taught otherwise. The Council of Trent also set the tone for what was to come, which, by the way, the Protestants lost the Council of Trent because of Sunday. By keeping Sunday, they were incriminated as holding to tradition outside of Scripture, and therefore you're just a rebellious daughter of the Mother Church. And so be wise and understand that if you are wanting to protest the Catholic Church, you need to walk the narrow road. And check out my statement of faith on my website to understand what my understanding of that narrow road is. Because there's several points that are important to walk on. Otherwise, you're not protesting the Catholic Church. You're in bed with the Mother Harlot. Just 11 years before this council in 1534, St. Ignatius of Loyola founded the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuits. Besides providing the papacy with a formidable secret police force, the Jesuits also trained an elite of theological scholars whose avowed purpose was to overthrow Protestantism. In fact, St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, there is a statue of the Loyola trampling Protestants underfoot, which, by the way, I think I have that. Let me see if I can find it here somewhere. Okay, here it is. I forgot I had to save it because it's not, you can't zoom in on the Google, but check this out. This is the statue at St. Peter's Basilica this is Ignatius. He's holding a book that said Ad Majorem Dei Gloriam, which is for the greater glory of God. Of course, it's not the Bible, it's their Jesuit slogan, which, if you remember Jesus saying that there will come a day when they're going to kill you thinking that they're glorifying God, which is just so fascinating. But what is he stepping on? He's stepping on Martin Luther. And Martin Luther has a book in his hand. Do you notice that? Now, of course, there's many speculations, but my educated guess is that this book is the Bible, if you know these people and you know what they're all about. So this is still a statue that's on display. The church, the Roman Catholic Church, is not recanted of this. They haven't taken it down. They haven't tried to do anything with it or explain it, or whatever. I'm sure they'd find a way to justify it. But the point is that this has been around for a long time. It tells you exactly what their purposes are. But anyway, moving on, just wanted to show you that picture. Here we go. Loyola's Jesuit order soon spawned two able scholars whose views would at last arrest and reverse the Protestant Reformation. To this tragic story we must now turn. Though this paper deals primarily with the challenge of futurism, it might well be to take a few remarks to also talk about preterism. Preterism. Luis de Alcazar shifts the meaning of the fulfilled prophecy to the past. The Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, born in the year 37 AD, believed that the little horn of Daniel 8 and perhaps also the little horn of Daniel 7, though we're not sure, was Antiochus Epiphanes, a Seleucid ruler who governed from 174 till 163 BC. And I have a bunch of stuff refuting preterism in my end time series, just FYI. So check it out. In this, Josephus shared the view of the Septuagint in Maccabees and many other Jewish scholars of the day. So the Jews, so there was a ragtag group of Jews that were appropriating those prophecies to themselves. But it wasn't even believed by Christians until the Counter-Reformation. In the 2nd century AD, an enemy of Christianity named Porphyry corresponded with the early church father Tertullian and tried to persuade him that Josephus' view was correct. Needless to say, Porphyry was unsuccessful, but in the late 16th century, the view which Tertullian had rejected became the accepted teaching of the Roman Catholic Church. Luis de Alcazar, Jesuit from Seville, Spain, picked up on the idea of Josephus and the Septuagint. Well, the Septuagint, the Maccabees is Apocrypha, so just FYI. But Septuagint is the Greek translation, so anyway. From 1569 onward, Alcazar worked to counteract the Protestant view of the prophecies. He wrote a 900-page commentary on the Book of Revelation titled Vestigio Arcani Sensus Yada Yada, an investigation of the hidden sense of the Apocalypse. The book was published posthumously in 1614. In this volume, Alcazar affirmed that Daniel and Revelation were fulfilled in the distant past. His system of prophetic interpretation came to be known as preterism. Alcazar believed that the entire book of Revelation was fulfilled in the first 6 centuries of the Christian era and that Nero was the predicted Antichrist. By relegating the fulfillment of the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation to the distant past, Alcazar argued that they could not apply to the papacy in the 16th century. Of course not. If Alcazar's view was correct, then the Protestant view was gravely wrong. Alcazar's alternative method of prophetic interpretation removed the incriminating finger from the papacy and pointed it at Antiochus and Nero. Tragically, many Protestants soon embraced Alcazar's unorthodox hermeneutic. It was first adopted in 1644 by Hugo Grotius of Holland in his Annotations. I can't even read that word, my goodness. Annotations. It's not an English annotation, but it's some Latin thing. Anyway, many other Protestant scholars followed suit. Noteworthy is the German rationalist J.G. Eichhorn, who audaciously republished Alcazar's book. So the Protestants were all about it. And of course, if you know their Jesuit schemes and how they infiltrate the Protestant Reformation with spies and double operatives and so on, then there's nothing to be surprised about. The preterist method was attractive to the German rationalists because it seemed to eliminate the predictive element from the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. Remarkably, preterism was first introduced into the United States by Moses Stuart in 1842. The timing was noteworthy. While William Miller and his colleagues were proclaiming a message based on the historical hermeneutical method, Satan was working to introduce the rival method of preterism, which is true. And the fact that the Millerites, we'll touch on this again, but the fact that the Millerites lost ground with their false prediction of Christ's return in 1844 really solidified dispensationalism and preterism and all these other false teachings. So that's interesting. Now, futurism, Ribera assigns the meaning of fulfilled prophecy to the future. But we must now turn to the other Jesuit scholar, Francisco Ribera, from Salamanca, Spain. Ribera was a brilliant student who specialized in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. He received a doctorate in theology from the University of Salamanca and joined the Jesuit order in 1570 when he was just 33 years old. Before we analyze Ribera's methods of prophetic interpretation, we must underline that the early church fathers, not the New Testament writers, very important distinction. Remember, early church fathers were pagan converts, had certain futuristic elements in their eschatology, which is what I mentioned at the beginning. They almost unanimously believed that the restrainer of 2 Thessalonians 2 was the Roman Empire. They also believed that as soon as the empire fell apart, a literal evil individual would arise to rule the world for 3.5 years. In all fairness to these early church fathers, we must remember 2 things. The early church fathers did not expect the history of the world to last another 2,000 years. They believed that the coming of the Christ was in the foreseeable future, which again is true. Like you're not going to realize Bible prophecy until it's time for it to be fulfilled. The closer you get to Bible prophecy being fulfilled, the more clarity you have about events. This is why it's such a valuable thing that we live at the end of time to see all these things, to see history. The second point is prophecy is usually not understood. There you go. It's in its fulfillment until the time of it fulfills and the times of its fulfillment. Jesus himself explained to the apostles, and now I have told you before it comes to pass, that when it does come to pass, you might believe it. Now, again, going back to what we talked about with Matthew 23, with the lament over Jerusalem. If Jesus has told you what's going to happen, and Jesus is God, do you think that you can change when something will happen, whether it's later or earlier? It doesn't matter. Do you think you can do that? You can invoke the return of Christ by getting the Jews to be converted? Absolute antichrist. I mean, it's just total nonsense. Moving on. The Gospels reveal that the disciples misunderstood and misapplied Bible prophecy before the resurrection. But when the prophecies were fulfilled, their hearts burned within them as Jesus opened unto them the Scriptures. Luke 24. History proves beyond any doubt that the meaning of the prophecies becomes clearer as the time of fulfillment draws near, which is true. And this is an exciting thing, and you'll see today why that's so exciting. The early church fathers lived in the time of the fourth beast, Rome. The empire had not yet crumbled into the 10 kingdoms. The little horn had not yet arisen. The The best they could do was guess about the identity of the Antichrist. But the Protestant reformers did not need to guess. They had the benefit of looking back over 1,000 years of church history. They saw with their own eyes what the early church fathers did not. By the time of the Reformation, the Roman Empire had crumbled into 10 kingdoms, and an evil spiritual empire, Papal Rome, had risen among these kingdoms to rule over them. Thus, the reformers had the benefit of historical hindsight to help them identify the little horn, the man of sin, the beast, the harlot, and the abomination of desolation. Now, back to Ribera. The Jesuit scholar capitalized on the incomplete views of the early church fathers. In 1590, he published a 500-page commentary on the Apocalypse where he expounded upon the prophecies of Revelation using the literalistic hermeneutic of futurism. So he took what the church fathers had in ignorance, and you can't blame them. You really can't blame the church fathers. You cannot blame them. You and I, if we were in that time period, we would have believed the same thing. Do you get the point? And the Jesuits knew that, and they took that, and they took those weaknesses, and they added more to it and say, see, this has been church tradition. There's a reason to believe this. It's so evil. The main tenets of Ribera's eschatology are ascribed to a literal 3.5 years reign of an infidel Antichrist who would bitterly oppose and blaspheme the saints just before the second advent. He taught that Antichrist would be a single individual who would rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, abolish the Christian religion, deny Christ, be received by the Jews, pretend to be God, and conquer the world, and all in this brief space of 3.5 years. Ribera was a brilliant researcher and writer, but not an outstanding lecturer. Furthermore, his life was cut short when he died at the early age of 54. Ribera's views, therefore, needed a shrewd and articulate champion to carry this message beyond the realm of academia. The champion was soon found, and his name was Cardinal Robert Bellarmine. Now let's read about Bellarmine. Robert Bellarmine continues the Roman Catholic onslaught. Bellarmine was an Italian cardinal and also one of the ablest Jesuit apologists. He was a powerful speaker and lecturer to large audiences. Bellarmine picked up where Ribera left off. In fact, Bellarmine made it his life mission to spread the literalistic hermeneutic of futurism with unabated passion. He insisted that this is a quote now, quote, he insisted that the prophecies concerning Antichrist in Daniel, Paul, and John had no application to the papal power. This formed the third part of his Disputationes de Controversies, yada yada, polemic lectures concerning the disputed points of Christian belief against the heretics of his time, published between 1581 and 1593. This was the most detailed apology of the Catholic faith ever produced, and became the arsenal for all future defenders and expositors. Cardinal Robert Bellarmine, who was really piggybacking off of, what's his name? I forgot his name now. Francisco Ribera. Moving on. It called forth a host of counter-writings from Protestant leaders who considered him their greatest adversary. Though the basis of Bellarmine's prophetic views were identical to Ribera's, he fine-tuned and amplified many of the details. And he crushed in favor of the literalistic futuristic view, and he crusaded in favor of the literalistic futuristic view and against the Protestants with an evangelical zeal worthy of admiration. Bellarmine was an expert at turning the reformers against themselves. This is how you lose, folks. Before I continue this paragraph, this is how you lose. Remember, when the Protestants convened with the Catholics at the Council of Trent, Archbishop, I forget his name, but I've covered him in my Sabbath series, he condemned them because they kept Sunday. If you are protesting the Catholic Church, then you can't honor our tradition. You're honoring it, that makes you a hypocrite, therefore you lose. Your position is undermined. This is how the snake works. The snake knows the truth, folks. He knows the truth very well. And that's why he uses it to manipulate you in ways that you have to have giant fennec fox ears. Because if you don't have incredible discernment, he will find your weakest point and exploit you and destroy your confidence. This is what the snake has consistently done. From the beginning in Adam and Eve, where he was questioning Eve's ignorance. In fact, just a really quick point. In fact, if you read those early verses, what Eve says to the snake is actually wrong. She misunderstood what God says. God said, "Do not eat of the fruit, you will die." Eve, when the devil asks Eve, like, "Oh, what did God say?" And Eve says, "Well, God said, don't touch the fruit, don't touch any of the trees, lest you die." He didn't tell you not to touch it; he said, "Don't eat it." And
Yeah, so there's something very interesting behind that. Don't eat it, but touch it. To be plain, the idea behind that, as far as I have heard it explained, is that if the tree of life is regeneration, the generative force, well, then to touch the tree of life without eating the fruit is to essentially engage in lovemaking without actually completing the process. That is the basis for their all their rituals and all of their sexual energy rituals and stuff like that. That's what it's about. Is they base it off of that verse there. They believe that that is actually the flame that was stolen, by Prometheus or Lucifer. They believe that that flame is that energy, and so it's a harnessing of that. And this is something present in all of the ancient mystery religions, and it makes its way up till modern time, and very interesting the way they view these things. Another one is they believe if you partake in the tree of life, you will surely die. Therefore, you invert it. If you partake in the tree of death, you will surely live. And so, if the tree of life is generative force, the tree of death is essentially blasphemous sex. It is, uh, well, that's why sodomy is a big thing, primarily because they view it as the tree of death. So very interesting.
so what's the point? What's the message there? The message is that Eve had ignorance about God's word. She was ignorant. She was ignorant what God actually said. And because she was ignorant, the devil knows exactly what God said. And he manipulated her into taking of the fruit. So this is what the devil does. Very, very important. Moving on. For example, he wondered why Luther, who taught that his views were based on scripture alone, doubted that the book of Revelation belonged to the Bible canon. By way of contrast, Bellarmine came across the defender of the book of Revelation as part of the New Testament canon. So he made himself look good by making the Protestants look stupid in their own inconsistencies. That's why you got to walk the narrow road. Bellarmine also took painstaking efforts to document the fact that the reformers could not even agree among themselves as to when the prophetic periods began and ended. For example, some Protestants dated the beginning of the dominion of the Antichrist from the fall of Rome, 400 AD. Others dated it to 600 AD, when Pope Gregory the Great took the papal throne, and still others dated it somewhere between 200 and 773, 1000 or even 1200 AD. Bellarmine contended that if the reformers could not agree on the time period of Antichrist's dominion, neither could they be trusted to identify who he was. Do you see how the snake gets you? The snake knows the truth, and he's going to exploit every lack of awareness and discernment and skill that you have with your sword. The sword of truth must be used with great technique. If you want to cut through the lies of the devil, you got to practice with that sword, and you have to build your belief on evidence and on history, on a case. This is why I'm doing all these things in everything that I do, to give you ample evidence so
One
that you.
thing he says that was actually really, really, really profound, it stuck with me, which is one of the reasons I like this guy, is because he says, uh, long story short, that the two witnesses which pay witness to and confirm the identity of God are one, scripture, and two, history, which was really profound because that clicks. You need both of them, and that's why, for instance, you have people who take this overly scientific approach to it, but then they leave out scripture, so they're not going to be able to actually reach their destination because you need both. And I guess that would be an expression of duality in one way or the other.
You know exactly why you believe what you believe, and how you got there so that you cannot be manipulated with any little circumstance, and you have basics that you can handle any debate or any situation to defend your views so that nobody can enter your mind and plant a seed of poison. Moving on, Bellarmine also made painstaking efforts to document that the early church fathers, not the New Testament writers, believed that the Antichrist would be an individual who would rule for a literal 3.5-year period. See, they believed in it. So you're not following tradition. In this way, he tried to prove that his view was the original belief of the early church. See how this works? He also documented that each of the reformers interpreted the symbols of Daniel differently. In this way, he worked to undermine their views regarding the identity of the Antichrist. So because they had inconsistencies, they were exploited. In chapter 5 of his work, Bellarmine employed a key argument which would later be picked up by Protestants. There, Bellarmine rewrote history, saying that the Roman Empire had never been divided according to the specifications of the prophecy of Daniel 7, and therefore Antichrist could not have come yet. According to Bellarmine, the complete desolation of the Roman Empire must come before the advent of the Antichrist, and this desolation had not yet taken place. Later on, we will see that a host of Protestant writers picked up this argument and, quote, ran with it. This is what the dispensationalists believe with the whole Holy Roman Empire in return. It's just nonsense history. The essence of Bellarmine's argument is that the papacy cannot be the Antichrist for 3 reasons. Number 1, the Antichrist prophecies call for an individual, but the papacy is a system. The time periods must be literal, but the papacy has existed for centuries. Antichrist will sit in the Jerusalem temple, but the popes are ruling in Rome. Do you see how all these are inversions of the truth? Now, there's another one with Manuel Lacunza I want to read, and we'll put this all together. Before we continue Futurism's incredible journey into Protestantism, we need to pause and take a look at the work of another Jesuit priest, Manuel Lacunza. David Pio Goulon has done a comprehensive study of Lacunza's eschatology and found in his monumental work, The Coming of the Messiah in Glory and Majesty. At this juncture, we will review some of Goulon's conclusions about Lacunza's work. Lacunza was a Jesuit at heart and an avid student of prophecy, so it can be hardly doubted that he was acquainted with the writings of Ribera. In fact, like Ribera, he was an avowed futurist and loyal Roman Catholic, of course. Lacunza's futuristic eschatology included the following. The fulfillment of Revelation 4 through 22 is still in the future. The 3.5 years time of Antichrist dominions is literal. The 144,000 will be literal Jews, so dispensationalists, this is where you get your beliefs from. Literal Israel will be gathered and converted during the Great Tribulation, which will take place immediately before the second coming. God will then literally fulfill all his covenant promises to the literal nation of Israel. So this whole idea of this gathering and tribulation is very old, folks. And you'll see some other influences with the whole rapture too. There's demonic influences, but it's all demonic. The millennium will be a period of peace on earth where people will live in their mortal bodies. Inversion of the truth. During the millennium, the literal sacrificial system will be reestablished in the literal Jerusalem temple. If you believe God would ever do that, then you don't believe in the God of the Bible. But anyway, it is obvious that contemporary Protestant expositors of Bible prophecy have borrowed extensively from Lacunza. It is a sobering fact that many of the views on prophecy which are presently being taught by conservative Protestants have been borrowed from a Roman Catholic Jesuit priest, and you're going to see how they were borrowed. It's truly phenomenal. Lacunza, however, departed from the run-of-the-mill futurists of his day by saying that the coming of Christ will precede the millennium, which Ribera and others were amillennialists. The final Antichrist will be a single individual, but an apostate system which will arise at the end of the age. In Lacunza's own words, quote, "If we expect to see accomplished in one man all that is said of the beast with all that is announced to us in so many other parts of Scripture, it is much to be feared that all which is written will take place, and such an Antichrist is not appearing. We shall be looking for him when he is already in the house. Likewise, it is to be feared that this idea which we have formed of Antichrist may prove the chief cause of the very carelessness in which men shall be found when the day of the Lord arrives." To make a long story short, Lacunza's work found its way to England around the same time as Berg, Todd Maitland, and Newman were expounding their futuristic views. You'll learn about these people. They're all critical to dispensationalism. And in a rather strange and unexpected twist of historical providence, his work was translated into English by Edward Irving, who was also the founder, practically, of the modern Pentecostal movement. In fact, Irving's translation of Lacunza's work was first published in 1833, the very year the Oxford Tractarian movement was getting underway. We'll read about this as well. We see then that the Protestants in the Great Britain were bombarded with literistic futurism from both sides of the Atlantic. On one side in Europe, there was Ribera, and on the other side in Chile, there was Lacunza. But there's more. Let's now take a look at some movement in the Great Britain, which was destined to derail the Protestant prophetic hermeneutic, which was the Oxford Tractarian movement, which we'll read about it in the next section. So, what do we take from this? Well, futurism was vaguely held onto by the early church fathers because they had a reason to. I mean, they didn't have history. So, of course, they believed that Jesus was probably going to return pretty soon, and that's probably going to be a golden age and
James
so
is
on. So
out
those things
tonight.
were
He
very
had
easy
some
to
business to take
espouse in
care
their
of, so
day.
I usually fill in when he's
The
not
Jesuits,
here. He'll be back
three
tomorrow
of them,
night, though.
Lacunza, Ribera, and Bellarmine, capitalized on the ignorance of the Protestants, because the Protestants, although they could point the finger at the Pope and they realized that something was up, we're under the beast system, they didn't agree on how to interpret all of these prophecies correctly. Because again, the time wasn't yet to be fulfilled. When Luther was doing his thing in the 1500s, the mortal wound was still almost 300 years away, 250 years away. Do you understand? So it wasn't entirely clear when this 1260 period was starting. And so because of that, they all disagreed, and the Jesuits took advantage of that. The Jesuits also took advantage of the ignorance of the church fathers and used that as saying, see, this is the original belief, but you're deviating from tradition. You're just a heretic. See how all this works? Phenomenal gaslighting, phenomenal mind games. But ultimately, this is what happened. And another interesting thing, which we'll touch on in a little bit in a future part, is that Muslims also believe in a personal Antichrist walking into the temple proclaiming himself God. And the guy who made those prophecies, Tamim al-Dari, was an ex-Catholic. So there you go. Something to think about, which we'll do a little more deep dive in a future part. But anyway, the Jesuits took these ideas, twisted them, inverted reality, inverted the times, just fulfilling Daniel 7, verse 25, that the little horn power would change the times and laws. They changed the times, they inverted them into fleshly interpretations. The Jesuits shifted attention off of the church onto the Jews, whether it was preterism or futurism. They just got your attention off of history and either to the left or to the right. The writings of the Jesuits influenced many Protestants directly and indirectly. And of course, you also had secret agents through the Counter-Reformation and all that stuff. You know, these things were very happening.
Okay, so I'm going to switch it over to this tab here. This is kind of what I wanted to go through, because I had run this out on this document. Let's see, from, if I could read that, 1857. This is a document from 1857. The Secret Instructions of the Jesuits. So one thing to really remember that kind of seals this whole thing home is that when you go and you look at the actual founding of the Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt himself was a Jesuit priest. So it's very easy to see this kind of link. I showed you the video that I showed you before because it's very important to understand this way that they've messed with the way that things are viewed, especially with dispensationalism, with this timing, the way that they viewed the timing of prophecy. And that's a big debate. Really, a lot of people have a lot of big ideas on it. And the way that it's best explained is that it's theater. I mean, I guess that's the simplest way to put it, is that it's theater. These things, like Bill Cooper had originally said, he had said that either somebody is implementing these fulfillments of prophecy to lead people or to guide people in a direction, um, or it was real, which I think basically uh, the way the Jesuits and the Catholic Church view it is that if the prophecy is going to happen and we have a vested control in it, if we can control the way that it does happen, we're going to be better off to shape where these people end up after their theater act and act as multiple stages. Uh, and that's, as he says, back to Rome, which I think is probably the destination. And I've been kind of thinking about why that's uh, more and more likely. It's because that's the role that all of these Catholic, because if you go and you look at any one of these big influencers today, they're all Catholic, which was a question that I really wanted to answer. It seems like Trump is also very friendly with Jews, obviously Israel, but Catholicism, which is much more downplayed, as I would expect. Um, I think it's interesting to stress this Catholic angle a little bit more. Um, Not necessarily Catholic people. I mean, obviously, you got to uh, take it with a grain of salt. But the Catholic Church and all of the things it's still involved in, money laundering, the mafia, drug trade, gun running. The Catholic Church has got its hands in everything. So, what I wanted to, let's see, I had highlights, but they went away. The discipline and treatment, and that's what the title of this was: the warrior monks. Any of these systems that were created were necessarily military warrior discipline. Um, let's see, the army, the prison system, the way that they rip the humanity away. You're not a human, you're a number, you're nothing, you're replaceable, you're just a cog. That's what I'm getting at here. It is that idea of dehumanizing and making somebody who will follow orders, which is also your MK Ultra, your mind control, the way that that works. So it's very important to understand this is pretty much a Jesuit system. They were the ones that kind of co-opted this strategy, and it was heavily based in occultism, which I'm kind of working on right now. I would like to study the spiritual exercises, but I haven't gotten that far yet, and see how that was kind of elaborated on, because this is a whole sect of theology I'm coming to find out. The internal discipline was rigorous. Members who displayed insufficient, quote, spirit of the society, unquote, showed affection towards other orders, the poor or their families, or who expressed scruples about acquiring wealth for the society were gradually alienated and ultimately dismissed. Those nearing dismissal were subjected to mortification and vexation, including being forced into menial tasks, removed from studies and honorable posts, publicly reprimanded, and denied recreation until they showed murmuration and impatience, justifying their expulsion. If dismissed, their evil inclinations, failings, and vices were secretly recorded to impede their future prospects. Blackmail. Great, interesting. And the society widely disseminated general reasons for their expulsion, such as immortification of the mind and disobedience. So, where have we seen these tactics before, guys? These are very interesting tactics. They've been doing this for a lot of years. Former members, how do they handle former members who oppose them? Systematically undermine former Jesuit members, especially those who left voluntarily, considering them implacable hatred against our order. Considering them implacable hatred against our order. Before dismissal, members were forced to swear in writing that they would not speak or write negatively about the society. Their past evil inclinations, failings, and vices were recorded and used to hinder their promotion if necessary. The society circulated rumors about their alleged immortification of mind, disobedience, little affection, and spiritual exercises, and claimed the society never dismisses anyone without grave cause. That's funny. Yeah, so this is just the company. That's what they called it. It's got many meanings. It's CIA. is the company today. They still call it that. A company, as in a military. Um, Word's not coming to me. A military company, um, and that's what I believe it was Napoleon was the one that said that. He said that the Jesuit order is a military order, and that's actually come out in recent times. Some people have slipped up, but it's kind of one of those dirty secrets that they don't speak about. Uh, but officials have actually, admitted that. They've said, yeah, the Jesuits are an intelligence network. They very much are. So these were quote unquote secret instructions, and these are where they ended up coming from. The origin of these instructions is attributed to Leibniz and Aquaviva, the immediate successors of Ignatius of Loyola, the society's founders. The discovery was not singular, but occurred through several key events, bolstering claims of their authenticity despite fervent Jesuit denials. So, 1658, uh, Paderborn, Westphalia. Christian Duke of Brunswick seized the Jesuit college and its archives, where these secret instructions were found among the rector's documents by the Capuchins. Prague, a second copy was discovered in the city of Prague. Amsterdam, a bookseller named John Schipper acquired a copy in Antwerp and reprinted it. The Jesuits attempted to buy up the entire edition to suppress it. Interesting, Venice, 1596, manuscript version was found at the end of a work in a British museum, containing an explicit caution to communicate the instructions with the utmost care only to a very few, and those the well-tried, and an injunction to deny their authenticity if imputed to the society. Very interesting. So I've noticed that in all of the research and whatnot that I've done here is that usually the Catholic Church is the one that cleans it up the most. Um, they bury their information very deep. For instance, you're not going to find any of anything that gets published like this today. A lot of these old books were much easier to publish now in the modern time, where everything's centralized, and it's very easy to uh, strike something down, shut something down, get rid of it. The 1984, the editing of history, so and so. That's why I've started downloading, saving stuff like this, because it's really disappearing in numbers. Um, let's see. Yeah, well, what's interesting is that these secret instructions really form the basis of um, the 25 steps of the Illuminati by Pawns in the Game, William Guy Carr, which I did an article on that before. I'm just going to kind of glimpse through, or uh, go through these really fast, because there's a lot to this article. It's pretty long, but I think just stating the chapters will give you an accurate picture. Chapter 1, establishing a new foundation, the deceptive facade. So present itself as driven to charity, humility, and selflessness. There's your DEI. There's your uh, all this catering to the poor. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. What I'm saying is that what they do is they take the guise of the people who help the poor, and then they turn around to do like the work, like they parasite off the people they claim to be helping. That's literally their cover. That's what it's saying here. It presents itself as a charity, humility, selfless, but be cunning, crude, and parasitic on the underbelly. Uh, Publicly professing poverty and offering service gratis, they are to discreetly acquire land and trusted friends' names. Yeah, so build up financial assets, infiltrating the elite, the architects of influence. The primary objective is to gain the ear and hearts of princes and noblemen, transforming them into our creatures dependent on the society. This is achieved by winking advices, political manipulation, covert appointments, exploiting animosities, and total submission. Winking advices, I thought that one was pretty interesting. Putting a favorable construction on whatever they do amiss, even encouraging forbidden marriages by promising easy dispensations from the Pope, under the guise of common good of mankind and greater advancement of God's glory. And that's basically what that statue in the video I showed you was. A political manipulation. Winking advices. It's basically saying anything you do wrong, as long as you can gain something from it, just kind of, that justifies it. The ends justify the means. That is a Jesuit phrase. 100%. The ends justify the means is Jesuit in origin. Political manipulation. Obviously, they were kicked out of multiple countries for that. Covert appointments, exploiting animosities. Yeah, that's interesting. So basically, pulling high school drama. This way, I would read that. Spread rumors. Talk about people behind their back, get them to turn on one another. Total submission. He's developed these. Ignatius of Loyola has developed these spiritual exercises, and they basically involve putting you in a room by yourself. You're silent. You can't talk for days at a time, and you got to do anything you're told. And so they put you in these caves and these small rooms and total darkness, and that way it induces basically the hallucinations after you sit in there long enough. Leveraging non-wealthy influencers, authority, and wisdom. Those in positions of authority, even if not wealthy, are to be courted for their influence against society adversaries. Their wisdom can be used for amassing temporal goods, secretly using their names to avoid scrutiny. Yeah, so kind of get people who can act on behalf of without being tied to. Um, Classic strategy: confessors and preachers, the art of gentle subversion. This was interesting. Joe Biden was a Catholic, and he would go to his little Catholic church every now and again, and they made a big um, news event out of it. Oh, how sweet little old man's going to church! But all the while, he goes confession, and subtly the priest is giving him his positions on these things, at least moral positions. Um, Put it this way: let's say you're the president of the United States, and you have to bomb and kill a bunch of people, and it's like you had to make the decision. Just you have to live with it. So you go to some spiritual relief as you perceive it, and that's what you go and you talk to your priest about. So, how would the priest respond to that if you're confessing a president, and you would actually be very surprised to understand the effectiveness of it, because before you had Epstein blackmail operations, you had the Catholic confessional. Catholic confessional was the original blackmail, and it's brought down kingdoms. Rivals in opposition. Uh, kayfabe, like wrestling, wrestling show, WWE. Just play one guy against the other. Rivals and opposition, eclipse and suppress. Other religious orders are to be openly surpassed in learning and good example. Their defects must be diligently canvassed and remarked, then gradually published to our faithful friends, but always with prudence and a seeming sorrow. That's messed up. With prudence and a seeming sorrow. Oh, I feel so bad for these intellectually challenged people. Those established schools in Jesuit dominated areas are to be accused of fomenting tumults and sedition, with the assertion that no society but ours is qualified for discharging an office of so great importance. I mean, that's American exceptionalism, I'll say that for sure. Wealth acquisition. This is very interesting. Basically, what they would do is they would go and befriend elderly people they would cut them off from their family, so you don't have a family to worry about inheritance or anything like that, and then get them to donate all of their money to the society, which is very evil. Uh, Inducing rich widows to be liberal to our society. Let's see. Uh, Encourage to beautify chapels in their home, severing them from outside social contact. Yeah, servants not loyal to the society must be gradually removed and replaced with our creatures to dive into every secret and have a finger in every affair transacted in the family. Yeah, this is evil. What's more evil than uh, playing on somebody's spiritual trust? Televangelists, they do it. It's way too popular. Catholic Church is the expert at it. Recruitment and indoctrination of youth. There you go. Oh, you'll like this one. The Yeah, let's see, where's it at? It should be in here. Um, there's a quote that I wanted to read to you. Um, mm, when you want something, you can't find it. This is pretty good. Secret instructions are presented as underlying framework for the Jesuits' dangerous morality and atrocious principles. The sources provide direct maxims attributed to the Jesuits, reflecting their ethical flexibility for the sake of the order. By the command of God, it is lawful to murder the innocent, to rob and commit all lewdness, because he is the Lord of life and death in all things, and thus to fulfill his mandate is our duty. So basically, he's saying God created life and death, so it doesn't matter which one we do because it serves God, which is actually a pretty occult way to look at it. The occult probably originated that belief with this here, if I had to guess. Uh, if an adulterous priest kills the man in his own defense, he is not a criminal. If an adulterous priest kills the man in his own defense, he is not a criminal. So I guess gay priests raping men or boys, he's not guilty. It's fun. A papist is a Catholic. A papist children may accuse their parents for heresy, although they know their parents will be burnt for it. Wow, hey, that's exactly interesting. There it is. Um, accuse your parents of thought crime. 1984. Um, Priest may kill those who hinder him from taking possession of any ecclesiastical office. That's wild. It is lawful to kill an accuser whose testimony may jeopard your life and honor. Great. Servants may secretly steal from their masters as much as they judge their labor is worth more than the wages they receive. Let's see. Um, a woman may take the property of her husband to supply her spiritual wants. Let's see. Is a witness bound to declare the truth before a lawful judge? No. If his deposition will injure himself or his posterity, or if he be a priest, for a priest cannot be forced to testify before a secular judge. These sound a lot like the Talmudic laws too. There's no doubt that they're one and the same, because all of these things go straight and squarely back to mystery Babylon religion, all the way back to Babylon, the mystery religions. That's where this all comes from, and they all are kind of practicing this same mystery religion, and it is Luciferianism. It is ultimately refusing to kneel to God. This was an interesting quote. Uh, Men who refuse to give God credit for their superior intelligence invariably become Satanists, and as such serve the Luciferian conspiracy. That's what it is. It's do you attribute and give thanks to God for who you are, or do you refuse to do that? And so many today refuse. They're not going to submit to it. They're not. They don't need it. And so that kind of rebellion, revolting is the word that comes to mind. I mean, that's really where this all comes from. The people who just won't uh, accept the truth, I guess you could say. Um, pride. Pride comes before the fall, and it's pride that prevents uh, people from exercising ultimate forgiveness. And it's not because God won't forgive these people. As a matter of fact, that's not what it is at all. And it's actually that you've out reasoned or out logicked yourself from forgiveness, because if you don't believe that you're capable of doing anything wrong, well then you won't ever think to ask for forgiveness. So if you are so prideful that you don't need any new information, you don't need to change your mind, you don't need to think outside the box, well, then you just kind of, box yourself in. And, why would I ever ask for something greater or for forgiveness if I've got all that I need? That's why it is quite literally the unforgivable quote unquote sin, is because you exclude yourself from the answer just because you're stuck in an insane loop. That's what it goes back to. Um, yeah, so this is actually right here. This is exactly what got them banned from all of these European countries. The French Parliament in 1762 cited reasons for their abolition. It's very interesting because we know what happens with the Jacobin movement. If you go back to the guy that I just showed you the video from, he talks about that. He shows some information that directly links Adam Weishaupt, the founding Jesuit professor who was born Jewish and then became Protestant. So he went through all of the religions, um, not Islam, but yeah, that's what these people do. Is they kind of just flip between one and the other, and they just kind of plant the native seeds wherever they go. This is what the Sabbatean and Frankists were doing. Uh, this is not one um, identifiable group of people. Is what I'm trying to say. It's not just one identifiable group of people. This is quite literally a spirit because it takes over people without their knowing. Um, people can be doing the bidding of this conspiracy without even recognizing it because it takes over people. And you have to be willing to hold yourself accountable, again, to be capable of wrongdoing and say, hey, I've done something wrong. I need forgiveness. Let's see. Um, why these secret instructions were essential to the guide of the society's power. Strategic infiltration and universal dominion. Basically, they could take this way of infiltration anywhere. Financial amassment through exploitation. Simple, make a lot of money by exploiting people, conning people. Control over education and information. They educate all of the. Here's the quote that I wanted to read to you. They control all the education, especially the royals and whatnot. Give us the education of the children of this day, and the next generation will be ours. Ours in maxims and morals and religion, uh, which states it all pretty much. There's another quote that was attributed to Vladimir Lenin. It was, "Give me one generation of youth, and I'll control the whole world," or something like that. Basically, if you can, and this is what Yuri Bezmenov said with the active measures. Uh, first you need to demoralize, which takes 15 to 20 years, and he says that the reason it takes 15 to 20 years is because that is the amount of time it takes to educate one generation. Very important concept. If you remember anything from that tonight, make that one of them, that it only takes one generation of children to be educated with malicious intent for this thing to be set off like a gunshot, I guess you could say. Suppression of rivals and dissent, hierarchical control and deniability, tiers of knowledge. It's like the secret societies, circles within circles. There's an inner circle and outer circle, and the people in the outer circle guard the inner circle, and it's a need to know compartmentalized basis. Which again, if you're looking at all of these things, this is exactly what intelligence agencies do because they exist on this wavelength, this underbelly dimension, where you don't talk about anything. That's what occult means. Occult, hidden, the underbelly, the secret dealings, things that go on in the dark. Extreme secrecy and limited access. That's what it was talking about. Strategic disinformation and denial. Elimination of leaks. To prevent internal leaks, the society from their first establishment has taken care that no one who is in on the secret can betake himself to any other order but that of the Carthusians, and this from the strict retirement in which they'll live in the inviolable silence they are compelled to. So it's like a gang. Don't talk about anything classified. Suppression of discovered copies. They're very good at that, like I've said. Cultivating the image of innocence. Catholic Church is good at that too. Unveiling the Jesuit doctrine of dominion. Methods of infiltration and control. Royal courts and nobility. That's a very important one. Gaining the ear, securing the heart. Moral elasticity and papal dispensation. Basically, we can secure you forgiveness. Don't worry about it. Political orchestration and deniable operations. There's that key point, deniable operations. Basically, what's the word I'm looking for? Deniability, but there's another one. The veil of plausible deniability. That's what it is. So if a prince embarked on an unpopular enterprise, the Jesuits would edge him on and excite him while dissuading nobility from opposition. So they would, kind of whisper in this guy's ear and kind of provoke him, but then say, on the other side, stand down. And so if nothing happened, they could deny it. But if something did happen, then they would be on the winning side effectively. Very interesting. This is very much the political system today, the way I see it. Infiltrating inner circles, control through confession, strategic marriages, dispute meditation as a means to power, knowledge of animosities among great men to have a finger in reconciling their differences, thereby gaining access to friends and secret affairs and engaging one party in their interest. Yeah, that's a form of manipulation. Times of war, they would foment and heighten the animosities between princes and step in as mediators of public dissensions to gain chief benefices and preferments in the church. Placement of loyalist officials, absolute fidelity demanded, capture of education and youth. Like I said, you could probably find a Jesuit school in your town. There's definitely some near me. Exploitation of the wealthy and vulnerable, targeting widows, perpetuating widowhood for gain, infiltration of households. Yeah, these are basically the tactics that are used and that were passed on to the Illuminati. And really what you're looking at here is as they would recruit people to distance themselves so they could have somebody else publish something and they were not connected to the Jesuits. That's kind of what I believe Weishaupt was doing. Is I think he was starting up what's called, quote unquote, the Illuminati, which there had already had a basis for in Spain, the Alumbrados, which were very active at the time of Ignatius Loyola, and so this is a very deep-rooted movement. What I'm going to do is I was actually going to show you some of the other posts that I have because I'm kind of doing a series on this, and I think that it kind of carries out for tonight because I wasn't planning on doing anything too long. I just wanted to kind of go through this article and introduce you to that theory that I'm kind of working on, and following this train of logic that's been presented by the Dance of Life, and you guys should check him out, danceoflife.com. Um, I'll leave the links in the description after this post. But I definitely suggest you guys check him out because he's got so many series on all kinds of different things, and he's done the research too. He's one of the very few people I know who actually implements, the historical model, which I thought was very profound. You need to look at history. I believe looking at history is fundamental to to whatever spiritual walk you have. So let's see. Oh, whatever. There I am. Need to do that. I'm streaming to Substack right now, but I've got Joseph P. Farrell, Financial Vipers of Venice. This was something that blew up. I got 1,000 likes on it. That was absolutely insane. It was talking about um, Mossad, Epstein, and Wexner. I guess I just got it at the right time. Covering corporate state, British fascism, deliberate dumbing down of America. I did all of the Genesis 6. That was a great series. You guys should check it out. The official urban substack.com. And let's see. I got Dr. Alberto Rivera. He's very interesting. I posted some of his lectures and stuff. He's was a former Jesuit priest. He's talked about it. He's written books. Roman Catholicism, and this is another article that I meant to show you guys. This is another presentation I did. You guys can check that out. Deep dives. There's the other article I mentioned out. And really, there are so many sources that are detailing the history of the Jesuits, and I wanted to present the theory over Bible prophecy that he talks about because I feel like that is key to understanding what's going on now. I think people are looking, as he said, in the future, these things are going to happen, but it's very possible that uh, it is not the correct way of looking at them. I thought that would be really interesting to research a little bit. But guys, I wanted to thank you all for being here. I just wanted to kind of plug my site a little bit. James will be back tomorrow, and hopefully I um, get to make some more content. I want to create some new series because I just finished and wrapped up the Illuminati Formula mini series where I took all of the chapters of Fritz Springmeier's book, the Illuminati formula, the formula to create an undetectable total mind control slave. That's the total title of it, the total title. But I did a set of videos that broke down every single section of that. Very interesting. Deserved more of an intensive look on it. So that's almost wrapped up. The last episode should be going out in a few days. And after that, I've got to find another series to do. So I'd like to kind of find the Genesis 6 series. I will show you that. That's worth showing you guys. Here we go. Yeah, every single section of the Genesis 6 conspiracy. A section is about 13 chapters. You can listen to them if you want. Those are like it sets up a dialectic and it talks about them. And then you have the summaries if you want to read the summaries. Section 1, Section 2, there's, let's see, 8. Yeah, 8. There's 8 sections in the first book, which is like 800 pages. Then there's a second book, and in that one, there's 7 sections. And every single section has got like an article that was long. It's just as long as the ones I've been reading for you now. So a lot of information if you want it. It's very easy to digest, very easy to look through. Use my notes, copy them, use them however you wish. I really don't mind. You know, you can use anything of mine as long as you're not, making a lot of, money off of it. You're not reselling it. I don't care. Use anything of mine. Um, yeah. So, guys, I wanted to thank you for tuning in. It's kind of a short little show, just presented a little bit. Just kind of wanted to show you what I've been looking at lately. And you'll probably see me in the future. I imagine James will probably have more to do, um, in the next couple weeks or the next month. You know how it is, just kind of sparse whenever he needs me. I've been doing very well on Substack, as a matter of fact. I've gained like 200 followers in the span of 3 or 4 days. That video on the Epstein Mossad thing, because of the timing. Now everyone's talking about it in the news. That blew up when people started sharing it. It's got like 500 reshares on Substack, and so that blew me up a little bit. So I've gained like 300 and some subs. I've got over 500 now. So I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I appreciate the support. James appreciates the support. Uh, and if you guys haven't, please hit the like button. That really helps us out. And follow the channel. James has always got something really interesting for you guys. It's always something new every night. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. Take care.